And what I always say to South Africans is this. You're told that Jan van Riebeeck is the first person to come and settle in 1652. No, it's not true. It was actually the Portuguese in 1485. Bartholomew Diaz landed in Cape Town. He tried to discover Cape Town in line with this decree that was given by the Pope, and the Khoisan fought him. They fought him on 3 occasions. Sure. The first occasion was Bartholomew Diaz, the second occasion was Vasco da Gama, and the last time...
Vasco was also Portuguese.
Vasco was also Portuguese.
Sure.
And the last time was in 1509 when they defeated de Almeida, another Portuguese coming from conquering India. They came back and they said, let's finish what Bartholomew failed to finish.
Sure.
Got there, the Khoisan remembered these guys. And part of the European law was that when you discover a piece of land, you put a cross, which was called a padrão. And once you've established your padrão, you need to then make sure that you begin to build European settlements in the area. They tried to put a padrão when they landed there with de Almeida, who was a military man coming from conquering India. And they had a fight with the Khoisan. De Almeida was killed in that war, together with a number of other men. They left and never tried to settle South Africa again because they got defeated.
So let's meet Bartholomew Diaz. So Bartholomew Diaz is the first Portuguese and European navigator and mariner and explorer to circumvent the southern tip of Africa. So the Portuguese were looking for a quicker trading route to India. And so Bartholomew Diaz found the initial route to the Cape of Good Hope, which was then followed up 10 years later by Vasco da Gama and continued to Asia. Bartholomew Diaz actually wanted to continue on to India because that was the initial goal. But his men were tired and they insisted on going back. So they erected a cross at the Cape of Good Hope and they went back to Portugal. Still visit the cross of Bartholomew Diaz at the Cape of Good Hope. Obviously not the same cross, but one that was erected in commemoration of his visit to the Cape of Good Hope. These are also inhabitants of southern Africa painted by a Portuguese artist in 1540 who they dubbed Cafres. Interesting thing to note. The Cape of Good Hope was actually founded in 1488 and it was named the Cape of Storms, but it was later renamed the Cape of Good Hope by John II of Portugal as it became the great optimism engendered by the opening of a sea route to India and the East. So this is Bartholomew, the guy you never knew. Not all of you, just some of you. Like this guy in the comment. Sure.
Jan van Riebeeck was not the first colonizer. The real start of foreign influence in Azania, now known as South Africa. In South Africa, the date, 6th April 1652, and the name Jan van Riebeeck are cemented in history textbooks as the singular start of colonization. But this narrative, which centers the Dutch as the first Europeans to initiate foreign control, is a historical myth. We'll talk about why there's such historical myth, who gets to benefit from such historical myth. Okay? Long before Van Riebeeck's 3 ships anchored in Tables Bay, other European powers, driven by global trade and conquest, had already been setting foot on African soil, laying the groundwork for the eventual takeover. To correct this history, we must look a century and a half before 1652. The real pioneers of European arrival were the Portuguese. Their motivation was simple: bypassing Islamic trade routes to reach the riches of India and the whole of Asia, the continent. Let's start with 1488. Bartholomew Diaz. Go and read up more about who's Bartholomew Diaz. Almost 165 years before Jan van Riebeeck, Portuguese navigator Bartholomew Diaz was the first European to successfully round the southern tip of the continent, naming it the Cape of Storms, later renamed Cape of Good Hope. He officially planted a padrao, a stone cross bearing the Portuguese coat of arms to claim the territory for the Portuguese crown. Then 1497, another Portuguese, Vasco da Gama. Less than a decade later, people who follow football, they know that the team that's currently known as Stellenbosch at some point was known as Vasco da Gama. Have you ever wondered where that name comes from? Because it is a Portuguese name. So 1497, Vasco da Gama. Less than a decade later, Vasco da Gama sailed along the entire coast of South Africa, making stops to trade and record detailed descriptions of the land and its indigenous people. While the Portuguese did not establish a permanent colony, they were the first to nominally claim the land, erect European monuments, and engage in significant and often violent contact with the local people, including the 1510 clash that resulted in the death of Viceroy Francisco de Almeida and dozens of his men at Table Bay. This was an early aggressive assertion of foreign presence. The half-century protoport trade and shipwrecks between the Portuguese and the Dutch, the Cape became a busy, if informal, international port of call. By the early 1600s, hundreds of Dutch and English ships were routinely stopping at the Cape coast for fresh water and provisions, interacting frequently with the Khoikhoi pastoralists. In fact, the direct catalyst for Van Riebeeck's settlement was a shipwreck in 1647. The crew of the Dutch ship Nieuwe Haarlem was stranded for nearly a year. They built a temporary fort, survived by cultivating the land upon rescue, reported favorably on the Cape's potential as a permanent supply station. Van Riebeeck himself was one of the rescue ships that sailed to the Cape, right? And it was his recommendation based on this earlier temporary settlement that led the Dutch India Company to establish the permanent post in 1652. So if Van Riebeeck wasn't first, why does history fixate on 1652? The answer lies in the definition of colonization. Pre-1652, characterized by mercantile contact, trade and raiding, temporary stops focused on the sea route to Asia. The Portuguese and English had no intention of mass settlement. Post-1652, characterized by settler colonialism, the permanent establishment of a settlement with the explicit aim of dispossessing the indigenous population of their land and labor to create a self-sustaining European society. The moment Van Riebeeck's orders required establishing permanent farms to supply the passing ships, the Dutch system moved from being a refreshment station to an invading settler force. It was this move that irrevocably led to the systematic enslavement of people and the dispossession of the Khoikhoi, the true markers of lasting colonial impact. Van Riebeeck was not the first European to arrive, nor was he the first to claim territory. Thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Tebus Kosana. The name of the platform is IZWI LABANSUNDU, the voice for Africans. Thank you very much.